Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. Today's episode is 56, and I'm so excited for this episode because we are going to be talking about how to ask the right question. What does this mean? Well, if you listen, you'll find out, because when you know how to ask the right question, you can get the right answer. Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them.
Hey, Kisma.
Hello.
How's your week been?
My week has been awesome. How's your week been?
My week's been good. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of what?
I have several different projects in the works right now in varying degrees of completion. Mm-hmm. And so it is busyness, and I'm feeling a little bit of a push to get it done before we leave for India.
We are going to India next week. I know. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited.
Are you a little nervous about the plane ride, the length of the plane ride?
It's been a few years since I've taken one that long. But no, not so much. I mean, there's always good movies.
There's always good movies. What about the taxi from the airport to the Vedanta Academy? That's always a trip.
That's always a trip.
I'm sure we'll talk about this when we get back, everyone. But it's like you get in this taxi, we book a driver that we know. And then it's, you land like at 10:30 at night or something. And it's this 2 or 3 hour drive of mayhem.
Yeah.
It's absolute mayhem because everybody's beeping their horn. Like they want you to beep the horn. Otherwise, they expect to get hit. So everyone's honking. And then there's invariably traffic, and it's just craziness.
It is.
I've never seen anybody drive like the way they drive in India.
I've just never, if there are lines on the roads.
No, I don't think there are.
Doesn't seem to be any kind of deference to the lines. But I don't even think there's lines there, and there's just all this traffic, and it's usually later than that. Usually it's like we get in at like 12:30 or something or 12 or something like that, and then we're driving at like 2 o'clock in the morning, but you have no idea what or where you are. I remember the first time I went there, it was rather shocking. It was just a shock to the system. I was like, wow.
It is a shock.
There's really nothing that that would fully prepare you for that.
Yeah.
But I am super excited to be going back to see Swamiji.
Yeah.
And the week was really, for me, it was just about kind of getting as many things in place and in order as I can before we go, so that we've got, some things running while we're away, getting the podcast to make sure that the episodes keep going out, and, the other projects as well. So it's been cool. A busy week, to say the least.
It's been a busy week, and you're doing some webinars on your Energy Mastery.
Which
is always cool.
Very cool.
We've got a couple spots open for that. What is it, January 14th, 15th?
Yep. 14th
Here in
and 15th.
sunny San Diego. So if you're interested, shoot us an email, info@sourcemovement.com. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We're going to see the master.
So what does one do? What does a human do when they're preparing to go and be in the space of a self-realized soul? Or is there anything that one can do?
That's a good question. I try to it's something that I take with me every single day in my life. So I guess I just don't really think about it. Study and reflection is a daily part of my life,
Right.
So I've always got new questions and things that are coming up and things that I'm exploring in my own studies. And so this just becomes an extension of that. I'm not, every time I've tried to think like, I want to have some good questions. Like, what are my most burning questions? As soon as I sit down in front of the guy, I'm just like, I got nothing, all of those really big questions seem somehow extraordinarily unimportant.
Irrelevant, right?
And it's like, I want to be with the master, and I know that it will be perfect no matter what. So I don't really think so much about preparing myself for it. I guess if somebody were going to prepare themselves for it, that's probably what I would think, is if you were going to sit down and have an audience with somebody who could literally answer all of life's most burning questions, in a way that's really relevant to you, is start thinking about your biggest questions.
Right.
And you'll realize how quickly how inane many of them actually are.
And just how much we kind of verbally regurgitate and vomit by trying to ask a question where really, if we would just pause and breathe and focus, we have the answer. And I know this is something I've been working with working on with my students, is how to formulate a question. And I know the first time we went to the Vedanta Academy, that's something that we learned really quickly through. It was like small group discussion, right?
Yeah, they do this process where you sit in a small group. It's usually maybe like half a dozen people. You've got one person that's facilitating your group, and you find a question. Like you have a question, generally a question that's going to be relevant to the text that's being studied, but not always. And then the group will go through a process to help you clarify your question and ask you questions about your question. Are you asking this? What do you want to know about that? So that you get really clear and really concise. And it could take as much as 20 minutes, 30 minutes to formulate a good question. But at the end of that process, it's, you realize what you were really trying to ask. And then that question gets put forth, because what I found with great teachers is that they have this sneaky way about answering the question that you ask. And so if you ask not a high quality question,
you don't get a high quality answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you'll realize, oh, well, that's actually, he did answer my question. I was trying to ask something else, and I just didn't do a good job of asking my question. So go back and get a better question. Right?
Get a better question. This is really, think about it for life. All the times we wonder what's going on, or asking or trying or this or that. And if we simply asked a better question, can you imagine the information that would come our way?
It's one of the most important skills you could ever develop.
It really is. For instance, one of the biggest things that I see with people I work with is they will be asking, well, why hasn't this worked for me? Why doesn't this work for me? Why am I not there yet? And it's like a negative downward draft question. They're focusing on why they don't have what they want, instead of how can I get more of what I have? How can I go in a more rapid pace to where I want to go? Like that, really understanding that their thoughts, even in a question, are attracting more of those kinds of thoughts in. So how you ask a question is also going to be attracting things to you of that same frequency or resonance.
Yeah. How can I more fully utilize what I already have? That's a question that I don't hear very often.
Right.
A question that I often, hear from people in different realms, is, how can I get more? How can I learn more? How can I know more? How can I, all this other more. And it's like, well, people aren't really asking, well, how can I do more with what I have? And that's not to be like smaller and play smaller. It's just say like, how can I be truly resourceful so that I can master what I have, and then I'm ready for my next step.
Yeah, and I think it seems to me what you're talking about, this is kind of a phenomenon. People will get information, people will get teachings, and some of you listening might have been in this place. And as soon as you get it, you want the next thing, but you haven't mastered what you received, right? You haven't mastered it, yet you want more. So think about it. If we're shooting for more and we haven't mastered what we have, how are we going to master what we get?
You're fragmenting, and you're creating a disconnect is what I see. Is like you actually fragment. So the gap between where you are and where you think you ought to be becomes greater and greater, causing more and more anxiety, which causes you want to fill up that gap with more and more information, which is actually driving you further away from where you want to be.
Exactly.
So it's not good,
Right.
I think I talked about this on a podcast, maybe a couple podcasts ago. I can't remember, but something that I've been kind of aware of is where I'll pick up a book and I'll read it, and then I'll get exactly what I needed pretty much right off the bat. And I'm like, good, and in the past I would keep reading because I want to finish the section or the chapter or whatever, or I want to get to the next thing. And lately I've just been,
Done.
take a pause,
Yeah.
like good.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
good. I'm going to actually go implement that.
That's pretty cool.
And reflect on that and really try to understand that at a deeper level, because I know that I just got what I needed. So close the book, slowly step away and, and go put that into action in my life. And what I found is that I can do way more with less. And my life is not have as that anxiety about learning and having more,
Well, and also there's that we do what we think we should do, that word should and I have to. These are heavy words. Like these are not strong words. So if you're feeling like I have to do this because this is what society expects, or I got the book so I have to, or I should, that means you're not in touch, I think, like with what you really want to gain and implement and transform. Here comes the train of truth right behind me. So, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this. That is a human not in control of their day.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just running in every which way, to try and get it all done. So it's really stressful way to live.
Yeah. So back to this question thing though, because this is really fascinating to me. And I know we're going to be like really contemplating the questions we ask. And I know we'll have some cool episodes when we get back from India. I have been pondering some questions and I'll see, we brought up like enlightenment and we saw the most hilarious Facebook thread. And I just gotta mention it because it was like, what the heck?
Well, if you didn't mention it, I was going to.
Yeah.
So
there's this thread from some pretty cool people. Just what was the initial question?
I don't remember the initial question. It came in some different parts of, throughout as it unfolded. But it was like, oh, I do remember the first one. It was,
are you an enlightened master?
Are you an enlightened master?
But then right after the question, he said, now don't spend any time trying to define what enlightenment means.
Like let's not bother with the definition of enlightenment. Let's just declare that if you think you're an enlightened master.
And I'm like, I'm calling BS on that one. Like,
yeah, you did.
That is just insane.
I stayed out of it as long as I could. I just at a certain point, my mind got the best of me, and I was like, I just have to chime in here. But most of it, I looked right at it, and I was like, that is a crazy town question if I ever saw one. So, and why? Okay, so let's just. Why is it a crazy town question? I'll ask the question because you're like, well, what's so crazy about that? So here's what's crazy about that is because if you're going to have a discussion about something and you don't put it in any kind of a context, then everybody's just talking. Then they're saying, I'm an enlightened master. But to one person, that means I got wasted on LSD last week and had some kind of spiritual experience. And to the other person, it means like, well, I've been in my spiritual practice and study for many, many years, and I'm totally not, or whatever. And so there's no context about like what that means in the different traditions or in the different humans' lives. And so it's like, and then they started to, it became this conversation about like, oh, well, you're afraid to declare it or afraid, whatever, like step into your enlightened master status or like whatever. And it was like, all of a sudden it went from the spiritual conversation to like judgment.
Yeah.
Like you're not stepping in big enough or whatever. It's like, well, I don't even know what the frick you're talking about for one, because there's no context been provided.
No context. And then not allow, like that was the thing. It's like not even when there was no context, but saying don't provide a context, like don't provide the definition. It was just a massive mess. And I was like, this is what people really get entangled with. And it was really a marketing thing, right? It was definitely geared to get a lot of people chiming in and giving their thoughts and the whole thing and whatever will come out. I'm like, man, and I think I said if I were enlightened, I'd be nowhere near Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, nor would any of those.
Facebook?
Yeah, it's just funny.
But I think it's fair to. I mean, I'll just describe what I think that is, like that state, just to put some context around it from our perspective.
Exactly.
And whatever you think that is all well and good. When we talk about the enlightened state, we're talking about a state that differs radically in kind from the kind of experience, the relative that experience that we're having right now, right?
Yes.
So in the relative world, you could say, like, are you enlightened? And my first question would be, well, compared to what?
Yeah. Right.
Compared to my dog, maybe not. I don't really know what goes on inside Leonard's head. Like who knows? Compared to my cat, I don't know. Compared to that other person, I don't know. And it kind of keeps leading back to I don't know. But at the end of the day, compared to what? Compared to that rock, probably. Okay, likely. But at the end of the day, that is kind of the conversation that I saw unfolding there. It's a state that people seem to kind of come in and out of based on, their level of awareness at that particular moment.
Right.
And that's cool. But when I talk about enlightenment, it's once you see and step into that state of being that is absolute.
It's a different state.
I am the one. All things are me. I am all things. There is no other.
Right.
It's an absolute state. And you would never, you wouldn't come back. You wouldn't come in and out of that, if you had the true experience and the true understanding of it. You would basically that would be a radical shift. It's like waking up from a dream.
Exactly. That's what you describe. And it's really funny because at least per the absolute teachings that we've studied, we know one enlightened being, and he doesn't even talk about it. He wouldn't say it because it doesn't mean it to us. We don't know what that is because we are not it. So like Nick said, if you have a room full of sleeping people and one person wakes up, the people that are sleeping don't know that person is awake because they're asleep.
Right. So they I think some people kind of took offense when I said, anybody who's claiming to be an enlightened master that's a really good indicator that they're probably not. Right. And I try to say it as sweetly as I could, but
there's no sweetness on that.
I just kind of had to say it,
especially on Facebook.
Right.
Get the heck off Facebook.
It's crazy time. What was I even doing there? But anyway, I asked it anyway. And I think some people took offense to that. And it wasn't to say that there's anything wrong with you, but they're trying to figure out is it just something that you're not supposed to talk about if you're an enlightened master? And they're like the rule breakers or whatever. And it's like, no.
You likely wouldn't be talking about it.
It's just totally irrelevant to everything that you're doing with your life. It's just not relevant in any way. So why would you bother? And what possible good could that do? And come to find out, what possible good that could do is in your marketing message. Like if you want to connect with a certain amount of people, section of people who are interested in spiritual awakening and spirituality and all this, and they're looking for an enlightened master, then you would claim it for that. And I'm thinking to myself, that's probably the worst decision you could ever make. Like that's really going to create some more crazy in people's lives. So please don't do that. Don't do that.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, when we talk about enlightenment, that's what we talk about. But that's the fun part about it to me, is that it's totally irrelevant. Look, spiritual development and spiritual enlightenment are just 2 points on the same path, right? So focus on development and forget about enlightenment, and you'll get there a lot faster. Well,
let's reframe, at least for me, because I don't like to forget about enlightenment. I think it's a beautiful thing to ponder that a human could be self-actualized. Is that the right way to say it? Self-realized. I'll just stick with that one. Because that actual word is hard for me. But it's a great, lofty goal. And I look at it as, wow, one lifetime, this will happen. And that's amazing. To be a human that's so objective, you're not affected by the world, that you're so loving, you see yourself in every being. Like that's an amazing state. So I don't want to forget about that, but I want to be okay on my path.
Yeah. That's a cleaner way to put it.
So there's no attachment, right? Yeah. There's no attachment, but like do what you're doing and know that that is actually, again, per the highest teachings, that's the reason we're on the world, is to seek this self-realization. That's why we're here, to go through our lives and keep climbing, keep elevating, keep coming in contact with our higher self, our full potential, and come from that place. And as we do that, as we do our work, as we're on our journey, then we help a lot of people on the way.
Exactly. Like every step into that or every step towards that is that much less stress and anxiety and pressurization that you experience in the world.
So much
that
less.
much more freedom that you have to be who you are, to express who you are, to follow your highest path, and to really bring forth something beautiful into the world, which is, your greatest gift, which is your being.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it's just like, I just like keep it simple. I always come back to try and like keep it. It's not, truthfully speaking, it's not that simple in our worlds. So making an effort to keep it as simple as humanly possible so that we can stay connected to it in our lives is a very worthwhile endeavor.
There are many, many distractions.
So many distractions.
Yeah.
So many.
So back to the questions. What questions do we ask about our lives to keep us on this path that the potential of is so amazing?
Well, I think you highlighted it really beautifully, actually, when you kind of realigned there to, well, I don't want to forget about what it is. I want to remember what it is and just be on my path there, right? So first of all, what do you want? It might not seem like a relevant question, but at the end of the day, if you're really looking in your life and trying to define where you're going, where you might be going off track, or why certain things are happening, best to realign to what you want. Like that's really important because you're in the relative world. Your wants and desires. Yeah, I know in the spiritual traditions, they're saying like it's the absence of desire. It's getting rid of all that. And that's
good luck, everyone.
Right. That's fine. That's actually accurate at a certain level. But in our relative worlds, we have desires, we have wants, we have things. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, what do you want? Like your desire, when it's directed in a proper way, can really drive you through your life in a really powerful and beautiful way.
Right.
So
right.
use that. So that's the first question. And then to me, the second question is just, okay, what's stopping me?
Oh, that's a great question. What's stopping me from having a more connected relationship? What's stopping me from better health? What's stopping me from losing weight? What's stopping me from making more money or having a different job? That's a question to ask.
Yeah. And I think anytime that's coming down to external circumstances, you're probably going to be off base.
It's a little trickster, right?
It's a little bit. It's like we externalize it. So why am I not making more money? Because, the job, or because of the leads that I have, or because of my boss, or because of all these other things. Okay. Maybe.
Probably not.
Now what? You're still, if you want to change it, you're still going to have to do something about it.
Right.
So what are you going to do?
So it's as if when you have a desire, that's a real desire. Like Nick said, I want to make more money, but you stay in this circle of, well, there's nothing I can do because of this, because of that. Can you see you're just twirling around? You're not getting anywhere on your path. So you've asked a question, why don't I have more money? But then you revert to all these external excuses without elevating right above, like, well, what can I do above and beyond all these external things going on, which are real, but what can I do more of that I can do?
Yeah. How can I translate that, more of this into the world? If you want to make more money, you have to command more value. And in order to do that, you need to be able to express your value to the right people, and you need to be able to ask for money in the right way, and then you have to be open to receive it, which oddly, many people are not,
Right.
So there's all these things that need to be in place. And when it's constantly something outside of you, I can guarantee that you will continue to find things outside of you that are preventing that inflow.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're looking for.
Right.
Now, that being said, the internal game of just, I'm going to clear all of my blocks and I'm going to do it all.
And meditate for hours.
And meditate on what I want. And then it's just going to come to me. I think
that's not going to work either.
Yeah, you're missing half of the equation there. And it's how you take it's, again, it gets back to that conversation about like, how do you take what you have in your life and the resources that you have and make the absolute most of it in any given moment. Right. Without constantly looking, because that's just another way of looking outside yourself and thinking there's something out there that's going to change this. And really, there's nothing wrong with wanting more money, but if that's your major driver, you probably want to ask yourself, what is that money going to do for you?
Will you be happy when you get that money?
What do you think that you're going to have when you get that?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a valid question, though. Some people want more freedom. Some people want to stash it away for college, buy a bigger house, invest in their own business. It's a really great question. The point is, you need to own the money, and the money doesn't need to own you.
Yeah. But it's really worth looking at, because I would say that beneath all of these very esoteric goals, enlightenment, things like that, that there are some very, very human desires that are trying to be satiated.
Right.
Feeling safe and secure.
Accomplished, achieved.
Feeling free. Yeah. Accomplished, achieved. Yeah.
Right.
Feeling like everything's going to be okay. Feeling like you can be yourself. Like whatever that is, there are some very human things behind that. And so the esoteric goals like enlightenment then tend to be a mask, I think, for something, just very deeply human.
Right. Right.
And it's and that's that going into the core of that is actually where the biggest and most profound results happen.
That's where the work is.
It's where the real work is,
because you have to go into the core of your personality to reach the enlightened stage anyways. I mean, to elevate your personality. Because when we look at it, if we elevate our personality, we're elevating our world, our experience. In order to do that, it's not an external resource. We need to ask the question, who am I? What's going on with me? Why do I want X, Y, and Z? What am I going to do with it? Why do I get triggered? Why do I get angry? Or why am I just indifferent? Inquiry of ourself is essential for any kind of journey, any kind of path of self-growth or spirituality or even business.
Absolutely. That's what makes it spiritual.
Right.
Is actually looking at yourself.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed on that thread was a lot of people, and I want to talk about this because it's important, I think, to be said. So I don't mean this in a critical way as much as to say like, please don't do this, is where people will make a lot of assumptions and just tell you all about how you're feeling and what based on...
That's always a hoot.
Based on absolutely zero evidence or zero information, like next to no information.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this with Elizabeth on that podcast, but it bears repeating.
Right.
Where all of a sudden, like I said this, and then all of a sudden somebody, well, I think, it feels to me like, you're hiding some deep-seated fears about, what it, and you're rejecting enlightenment. It's like, no, just no.
That's such like a classic personal growth. Let me go in and coach you on the spot, even though I don't know you.
I don't know anything about you. Yeah. It was really like,
calling it more BS.
Just no on every level. So don't do that. I don't know what else to say, but don't do that.
Don't tell people how they feel until they share it with you.
But let's, if we can, maybe just unpack that a little bit so that people, it makes a little bit more sense to them, because they're, a lot of listeners are probably like, I would never do that. But if you're one of those gifted people and you can see things in personalities, or you can see patterns that people are running, you may feel tempted to give them unsolicited advice. And that is a challenge. And to you, it probably seems like, oh my God, like this is just as clear as day to me. And this person's life would be so much improved if they just knew this or saw what I saw.
Right.
And that's so sweet. Yeah. And please never do that. Yeah. because at the end of the day, you can really, you can project things onto them that are wildly inaccurate. Like I can tell you for certain that this person that tried to do that with me was wildly inaccurate in every in every level, of both of how I was feeling and also what I knew or didn't know and the context that I was speaking within.
Oh my gosh.
So it was just wildly inaccurate. So that you could be doing that, right? Yeah. And secondly, and this is the more important piece, is you can very likely rob that person of the gift of uncovering that for themselves.
That's a really good one.
That's the most important one.
So here's the beauty of all this. I think it comes back around to what's the question you can ask.
Exactly.
Yeah. Questions are awesome.
Questions are amazing.
So give a little example. Say you run into a little emotional bunny who's quite upset over something. And rather than saying, hey, Bob, you're really upset and you need to do this, this, and this to get your life in order, how would you approach that?
Okay. That's a good question. Let's say that Bob just had a car wreck. Physically, he's okay, but his brand new car that he loves so much is wrecked. And
sucks.
Bob's really, really upset. He's really angry about it, and he's upset and he's sad. Okay. Hey, Bob. The first thing I'm not going to say is, I'm totally not going to say, hey, Bob, you're upset because you're attached to your car. If you weren't attached to your car, you'd be just fine. And all you have to do is just be less attached and you'll have way more freedom in your life.
Yeah,
can I
Mom's
teach
gonna,
you?
Punch you in the face.
Yeah, why don't I can show you how to be less attached. Do you want to be less attached? And Bob's going to be like, dude, you're a total jerk, man.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you?
That's not cool.
Like, that's not cool. And as accurate as that is, like that is actually true. It is factually true. If he were not attached to his car, Bob would not be suffering.
But he's not in a state to see that.
Exactly. And so what I would say, first of all, is just connect with that person as a human being.
Right.
Hey, are you okay, man?
Yeah.
Like, hey, Bob, are you all right? Man, and you can see that he's upset. So it's like, oh man, I can just really appreciate that you're so upset right now. It's a brand new car, huh? Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that.
A little empathy there.
Yeah, it's just like it makes all the world of difference. And then maybe, oftentimes everybody, that's enough. Like you're not here to solve everybody's problems.
Not your gig always, not your gig.
It's just not. And it's enough to let people feel seen and heard.
Right.
Right. But if Bob were so inclined to say, man, what can I do about this?
Oh, that's the question, Bob.
Then there's a good opportunity to say, wow, for you, Bob, one of the first things I'd ask is, man, like, Bob, what did that car mean to you?
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously it meant a lot. And it's important for me to understand that if I'm going to try and help him in any way, and he's asking for help, right?
Right.
I wouldn't even be having this conversation if he didn't ask that. Man, what did that car mean to you? And when somebody really talks about what a loss means to them, you get to connect with them on a more human level, and you also get to understand what is really happening with them in their world.
Right.
Like, why is this so upsetting to you? I mean, I can imagine if our brand new car got wrecked, I would feel upset, but it might be for totally different reasons.
It could be, right?
And then, you might ask some other questions that redirect. Hey, you're okay. Are you sure you're okay? Your body's okay? Okay, good. That's good. I can see you're agitated for sure. Do you think you're going to be able to get up in the morning and go about your day?
Yeah. So it's a reminder you're okay.
Yeah.
Not throwing it in his face, but you're okay.
Yeah. You give them an opportunity to reconnect with some of that. You start to ask them some questions, and then with those questions, you can start to kind of guide towards a higher path. But if you just feed them the higher path, they're done for.
Yeah, totally.
They're never going to listen.
Yeah, they can't hear you.
Think of like a child. When you tell a kid what to do, how often does that really work out for you?
Or if you ask the wrong question to a child, they're just going to look at you like, what was that? They don't hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, they just don't hear you. So that's one of the biggest things, and I really just want to impress on everybody. And I see this a lot. Somebody everybody like, you want to help. Like it doesn't come from a bad place. I'm not criticizing. What I'm saying is that there's a better way to go about it. So,
and sometimes it's just freaking not your business.
Yeah.
I know people have said things to me and I'm like, not your business. Really, I'm okay. I got this.
I'm good, But if you are asking for help, like I've seen this too, where people, Facebook is such a great study for this stuff, where somebody will post something up and they're literally asking for help, and then everybody just goes and gives them a bunch of advice. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Well, what about this or what about this? I'm not sure I really fully understand the problem. So I'm almost always going to ask another question.
Yeah, that's really good.
To make sure that I'm clear.
Speaking of Facebook, though, can I just give the inverse of that, where I've seen people post something? I remember this guy posted like a sales page that he wrote, and he was so proud of it. And he's like, hey, any feedback here? What do you think about this? Like, he asked the question, and then people started giving him feedback that he obviously didn't want, because then every time someone would say something, he would give an excuse. And I'm like, you posted it here and you asked for feedback. And he just wanted people to tell him how great he was. So it was a little bit of a wonky situation.
Yeah, that's funny.
So be careful what questions you ask.
Yeah, and be open to the real feedback.
Right.
And it's okay to ask for what you want. Like, he could have probably just put it out there and said, I'm so proud of this. I don't please, if you see things wrong with it, I don't want to know right now.
Yeah.
Just
I'm just so happy this is done.
I'm just so happy it's done.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, don't shy away from just being honest.
Yeah, it's totally okay to ask for what you want, So
I love that.
Yeah.
So powerful questions, clear questions, understanding how to formulate a question or a thought so that others can hear you, and as well, we can get the answers that we want.
Yep.
Life would be drastically different if we all practice this. Just think about it.
Yeah, it'd be profound.
Yeah.
I mean, such a profound shift.
So what questions are you going to be asking yourself later today?
Later today, I'm going to be asking myself, what's for dinner, for one.
Don't ask me.
No, I think I'm going to handle that with some spaghetti squash.
Okay, cool.
Maybe that.
Ooh.
Maybe. I'm not fully committed to that yet, but perhaps. I will definitely be asking myself, what good I did today.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah. What good did I do today?
Do you ever ask what you would do differently?
Absolutely.
That's a good question to ask at the end of the day. What would I do differently, without beating yourself up over it, but just be like, yeah, okay, that could have gone a little bit differently. Cool.
Yep. So that's some Mike. What about you? What questions are you going to ask?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at some marketing material I have out there and why it's not flowing like I want it to. And I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to sit down and really ask, because that's the other thing. I'm sure all of you know, when we're in the middle of something and we have a project and we're so excited and we think it should work a certain way and it doesn't, sometimes it's hard to see.
It is. It's a little baby, and it's just like,
So then sometimes we need to ask other people the question, like our amazing marketing guru, Nicola, like, well, what's up with this?
Yeah, that's always really helpful.
So sometimes we hire people to ask questions too.
Yeah, I'm finding with some of the different projects and different phases that the upside is that every time I come back to something, I have a fresher perspective. So I'm not so over focused on one thing. One of the challenges is just making sure that I switch gears real evenly, so that I go from one thing to the next and really cleanly.
Yeah, I could see that. So always inquire wisely, and just be, I think, just curious, right? Like the mind of the beginner. What is that famous story of a teacher, a sage meets with a student? And, the student, kind of like what we were saying, was already given information, but is back right at the feet of the sage. He's like, I want more. And so the teacher starts pouring a cup of tea, and he just keeps pouring. And the student's cup is like running over, spilling everywhere. He's like, teacher, why are you doing that? You keep pouring the tea. He's like, because you came with a full cup. There's nothing else I can teach you. You need to come with an empty cup.
I think we just leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Yep. Subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher.
If you're still interested in the science of spirituality, we'll have that link available as well.
Very cool. And other than that, we just love you madly. We're so happy to have you as listeners to the Illumination Podcast. It's such an honor and a pleasure to share our experiences with you and whatever we have that may in some way lift up your life to whatever degree. We are just so honored to be here with you and want to thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you.
Namaste.